This is a talk that I've been kind of dying to give. So thank you for having me and letting me give this talk. And it's new. So it's about analyzing your competition, and it's for your basically SaaS business. That's the focus. The main thing is, I think Dave said it. He said competitive analysis at the end of his talk. So I think it dovetails in. I know he was referring to centralizing it and all that. We also believe in centralizing it, but I'm going to more talk about kind of how you can do this, why you should do it, and kind of why I think it's super important. So ignore your competitors. This was the most sort of common advice we heard. So this is Peter Thiel saying it, saying people become obsessed with their competitors, companies converge on similarity. Okay. And Sam Altman, who used to run Y Combinator and now is doing some other kind of things around AI, said 99% of the time you should ignore competitors. Okay. And then Hiten Shah says, don't obsess over competitors, obsess over customers. Okay. And Jack Ma, chairman of Alibaba Group, says, forget about your competitors, focus on your customers. There's a lot of irony in what they're saying, but I'm going to get into that in a second. I think one of the reasons people say that you should ignore your competitors and why it's so much, it's just so like spread, is because it's was much harder to create a SaaS business. And so focusing on your own sort of customer was kind of all you could do. There were less SaaS businesses out there, and this is just kind of what everybody thought of. The funniest thing, though, is all the folks I mentioned are probably some of the most competitive people on the planet. So I don't know what to say. That's why I was like, okay. And yeah, to my point, there wasn't much competition in the past, so that's kind of another big thing. And the fear of creating Me Too products was really clear back then, and there's a lot of irony in that, considering there's a ton of Me Too products on the market today. It's hard to differentiate between one SaaS company and another a lot of the times, especially in categories like marketing and now sales and many other categories. So SaaS is basically growing. That's kind of the thesis that I would provide on that. So recently, I did a bunch of competitive analysis, kind of just like Matt was saying, about like going deep into something. My co-founder and I go pretty, we have a lot of depth when we think about a topic, so we have a lot of depth on how people think about the competition. So to my surprise, only 28% of people aren't doing any competitor research. So they're actually ignoring that advice. And these are the reasons they say they don't do it. None of these are like the same as what those folks who are highly competitive said. So we don't have time to do it. We don't have a clear process for research. Competitor research is not a priority. We'd rather focus on customers' needs. We don't have much competition. So these are kind of the main reasons that people say they don't do competitor research. None of those are really about we don't focus on competitors. Yeah, they could say customer needs, but they're not saying that we don't focus on them or we don't spend any time on them. We just don't do any competitor research. And what I mean by that is like these companies must be thinking about their competitors. These were the challenges that people described, the most popular challenges. So it's hard to find or gather the right information. It's difficult to find actionable insights. It's hard to determine which competitors. Competitor research is time-consuming. We don't have a consistent process. So this is the challenges across everybody, people who said they do it and people who said they don't. So this is Jack Welch, and I think that he speaks to competitive advantage in a pretty clear way, which is this idea of the ability to learn more about our customers faster than the competition. And also the ability to turn that learning into action faster than the competition. This is really what it boils down to. This is how you stay ahead of competitors, so to speak. This is how you create competitive advantage. Couldn't have summed it up much better. And it really is about the customers. So I think he's setting it up for what I really believe, which is don't ignore your competitors. And I believe that wholeheartedly, and I think that that's the approach I would take in a business, regardless of what size, what scale, or what type of business. And the reason for that is that your job is to understand your customers better than anyone else. And ignoring your competitors is the same as ignoring customers. And so this is one of my favorite sort of ways to think about it and reasons for actually focusing on the competition in the right ways. It's because basically you do have to keep reinventing, like she says. You will have new competitors when you do that. You'll have new competitors anyway. And you'll have a lot of new customers all around you, especially if you're reinventing. So reinventing to me is innovating, providing a better solution than anyone else in the market, whatever that means. I don't just mean product. It could be better sales in your case, better way to reach the customer with marketing, better technology, not just the product side of it, all kinds of things like that. And there are a lot of good examples out there of what I mean by that. The biggest thing and the takeaway here for me, especially as I think about competitors, is you'll never really understand the market without actually looking at the competitors, because the market is a combination of the customer and every single company in the market. And so it's a combination of those two things. So if you're just in a void and saying, look, we are us, we're this company, and then we're going to go basically service the customer, well, the customer is in front of the competitors as well. They're not just in front of you. So you're kind of missing a whole perspective on what the customer is seeing if you ignore the competitors. And that's kind of my big point. So I'm not sure why those highly competitive folks said all those things, but I really believe more so in what Ginny says here, which is basically that if you need to innovate, there are going to be competitors. So you're going to have to do something about them, and there's going to be lots of new customers too. So this is data about the 72% of companies who actually say that they do some form of competitor research. This is how they say they do it. And I think this, if you're going to take anything away today, again, Matt just said it, but like we're very thorough when we do any kind of work and want to understand something. We're super thorough when we do competitive research. I'll give examples of my latest sort of business that I've been working on and how we did it. But before I do that, this was what kind of made me want to talk about this. People are just Google searching the web. That's kind of the number one way they do competitive research. They're signing up for a competitor's product. Cool. So they're getting kind of a first-hand experience like a customer would. They're conducting customer interviews and surveys, but that's only 7%. They're doing review sites and social media, which I was really surprised by, which is only 6%. And they're looking at Ahrefs, which is a sort of SEO tool. So if you're doing competitive research on the SEO side to understand search intent and search traffic and things like that, you'd be using Ahrefs or Ubersuggest or SEMrush or a number of those products that are in the market. The funny thing is you're talking about single digits of folks doing some of the things that are kind of most valuable to you when you do competitor research. So I look at this and I think that people are just not being thorough, and they might not realize how important this aspect of research actually is compared to some of the other aspects that are out there. And the short of it is you can learn a lot by doing competitor research. Before I continue, though, I think it's important to really define who are competitors, how should you think about them, and there's these 4 types. So direct competitors are basically competitors that solve the problem you're solving or intending to solve for the customers that you're intending to solve it for. So those are direct competitors and the definition of it. Indirect competitors are folks who are solving, there's one of 2 of those, folks who are solving the same problem for different types of customers, or folks who are solving a different problem for your customer. Those are indirect competitors as long as they're kind of in the similar space as you. So this is the same as an email marketing tool and the social media tool, both going after marketers, or this is the same as 2 different email marketing tools, one going after real estate, one going after coffee shops. So those are both indirect competitors. Alternative solutions are a whole nother sort of category that's probably one of my favorites, and that's when folks are basically doing a lot of manual work. So one of the biggest alternative solutions tends to be Excel in most of the SaaS world, because people are using Excel when they don't use anything else to solve some of their problems. And my favorite new one, and I think this is a little bit of a newer one, is multiple tool solutions. So because of the no-code movement with products like Webflow, Airtable, Coda, and others, and because of the kind of king of the hill on that is Zapier, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with. You're able to stitch together a solution for a problem that you have, and that is a type of competition. So we use 4 different methods. We feel like this is pretty comprehensive in order to actually analyze competitors. So these are the different ways that we think about it. I'm going to go through most of these. So my current company is called FYI. We help you find your documents in 3 clicks or less. And we use these methods to basically learn everything we possibly could about the competition and the 4 different segments of competitors that I just mentioned. And the site's at usefyi.com. You can check it out. It's a free and a paid product, so it's freemium. And we've got lots of things going on. But this talk now is going to flip to how I actually put this into practice. It's another thing we do. We put everything we talk about into practice just to make sure that we're providing applied frameworks and applied methodologies, because I think that's super important in today's world. So first off, interviews and surveys. What we did is we actually did a survey. And it was about, I think, 7 or 8 questions. One of the questions I don't have here that is my favorite, and it has less to do with competitors, is asking people what their number one challenge is with doing something. So in this case, we were going after the document space. So we asked people what's their number one challenge when it comes to sharing and creating documents. And what we learned is finding them across all the different apps they use is the challenge. So find your documents in 3 clicks or less. That's what it's all about. And I'll get to why it's 3 clicks or less. And we learned that from competitor research, actually, on what the framing should be. So in that same survey, we asked people, what tools are you currently using for creating and sharing documents? And we asked them all the tools we could come up with at the time. And we got this great sort of idea of what these alternatives are and the popularity of them. And so this is basically, if you think about our business, the alternative product, so this is not a direct competitor, it's not an indirect competitor, it's essentially an alternative to our product, is people going into each of these apps individually and trying to find their documents, right? So we wanted to understand what that competition looked like, and more importantly, what was the popularity of it to start with. We also had a question later on where we asked people in the same survey, are you willing to talk to us more? Are you willing to get on an interview? Are you willing to do user tests? Are you willing to look at screens and things like that? The reason we did that is we knew what they answered here, and then we could go talk to them and kind of dig in a little bit more and understand how they're using these products to basically find documents, because that's the number one challenge that we learned people have. Another one of my favorite ones, and we're doing a lot more of this actually, just did another survey for this kind of data, but I love Net Promoter Score. I know there's a lot of people that have love and hate and whatever for it. The reason I love it though is because it gives you an apples to apples comparison on a specific score between different products in the same space. That's a simple reason. Second reason I love it is because of that open-ended question we always ask. And it's specifically worded this way, which is, what is the most important reason for your score? And just a quick tip on surveys and stuff, you'll notice that a lot of the surveys we do are all about the one thing, the most important thing, the one challenge, your single most blah. And the reason for that is we just want to know the top thing that people care about the most. We don't really care about the 5 things or the 10 things or anything like that. This is a mistake we see people make in surveys where they just ask people loosely, why is this important to you or something like that. So when we ask this, we actually learn a lot of qualitative data about why someone why someone was basically a certain level of satisfaction with this product. Again, it's in the weeds, but it really helped us understand what people love and hate about these different products based on Net Promoter Score. And so we have Net Promoter Scores for all the document apps. So then we created a little graphic for it, wrote a whole blog post on it, and we've got a lot more coming on our blog. But the idea here is what we learned was, and Net Promoter Score is a negative 100 to 100 kind of scoring. And so what we learned is that in the space, at the time that we surveyed, G Suite being the most popular was also the product that people are most satisfied with. And from there, basically, it goes all the way down to Confluence, which I think a lot of people have hate for, not just love. And that's why it has such a negative score. And you can see the emoji kind of represents what those different score levels mean. There's a more involved kind of scoring for Net Promoter Score on the descriptions, but we decided to change to emoji just because that kind of defined it for us. So competitor websites. This is one of my favorite ones. And basically, I kind of sandwich the competitor websites and competitor reviews in the middle because these are the strategies that you have no excuse but to go do, because you don't have to talk to anyone to do them. You're basically there alone in front of your computer, like many of us are most of our days, and are able to research and look. So competitor websites, I have a simple checklist. Homepage, landing pages, testimonials and case studies, features and benefits, pricing and packaging are kind of the categories we use in order to assess SaaS products in the space and how we do kind of competitor analysis. And this is not about yet what traffic are they getting or anything like that. This is literally all about this kind of stuff. So basically, if you look at Dropbox or you look at HubSpot, these are some old screenshots. I outlined in red some of the things we look at. What we're looking at is for all the words that they use and the words they use in different places. And you start noticing patterns when you start looking at enough of these competitor websites on what are these companies, and if you combine all of them, what is the market for this category telling their customers when they come visit. And And that's what we care about. We care about what the customer perception is on all this stuff. That's why the surveys are really powerful, as I mentioned. And so here, it's not about, oh, competitor X says this, or competitor Y says that. It's more like, across all of this information, here's the differentiation between them and the positioning they have in the market and the way that they're actually positioning themselves to the customer. That's what we care about. And we're looking for commonalities in the words. We're looking for things that are different. We're looking for things that one company says that no other company says. And then if you want to get even deeper into this, we do a ton of user testing, using usertesting.com specifically, because they have the largest panel that we've found. And we will actually have people run through a marketing site, specifically like long pages, and tell them to do something they normally wouldn't do. What we tell them to do is we actually tell them to go look at every single section of the page and tell us what they think about it, and tell us if anything's confusing about it. And the reason we tell them that is because what we're looking for, and you'll see this theme in a lot of the research we do, and the way we like to think about it is basically we're looking for love and hate. So if they love something and it's like buried on the page that's written, it's likely that that thing that they love is very important to them. And so it would be something where we would test, if we're competing with them, that value prop itself. If they hate something, it's also something we would test, but more from the idea of like trying to find out why they hate it. So user testing these sites can be really valuable too, because again, it's about the customer's perception of that business, customer's perception of the positioning of the company. So this is how we do it. There's no rocket science to it. We don't use automated tools. We read each and every word. We document the copy on each page in a lot of detail, and then we analyze and synthesize the results. You will generally find when you look at a group of about 3 to 5 people, one person is really good at this stuff, everyone else is no good at it, or they're just good at one piece of it. And so I can't stress that enough, because I've tried to train a lot of people on this, and the parts that are easy to train for are to read each and every word, document the copy on each page. It's that last thing that's actually where the magic happens, and most people are just not good at it. No offense to anybody who's not good at that stuff, but like I haven't found more than like about 20, 30% of people actually being able to do that really well, and that's if even. And the reason is it's a little bit more art than science on that level, but you can get really far by just doing the science. That being said, the art of it is like everyone's using these 3 different words, but they mean the same thing. Like those are the kind of things you don't get when you just read each and every word and document the copy on the page. You have to analyze and synthesize. I can't stress that enough, because some of you might go back and try to do this and realize like you didn't learn anything, and it's because of that last piece. Competitor reviews, this is like my favorite. Thank you, these different products that are out there that make all this stuff public. Thank you for all the app stores that make all this stuff public too. And you can find reviews and ratings in different app stores, B2B app stores, mobile app stores, et cetera. And again, like these are review sites. You have reviews on the products. A lot of products like G2 Crowd also will tell you the company size of the review and all kinds of stuff like that. You know, it's funny, like I look at these sites and I see the amount of work that we do, and we've done this over and over again, to basically take the data from those sites. We're not scraping it even, we're manually doing it. We just feel like that's a better way. And then we organize it into categories. And then every time I look at that data, I'm like, why don't they just make it easier for me? Like, it's their data, it's publicly available. Even if I sign up for some crap from them, they don't make it easier. Not to hate on any of the review sites, but like I think there's a big opportunity to make some of this stuff easier, because the value of those review sites isn't just customers looking at the reviews and making a decision. The value is actually the companies that are mentioned in there and the competitive landscape and things like that. And don't get me started on the way they categorize the different markets and industries. I think it's awful. I did not say that. Okay, so when it comes to customer switching, this is one of my favorite things that most people don't do. Right now, we're in the middle of one of these. And so I'll explain what this is, but one of the key things about business when it comes to people signing up for your product, and I call it the bookends of a product, people signing up and people canceling, is essentially they're switching from a competitor to you. And remember, my definition of a competitor could be a homemade solution, an indirect competitor sometimes, alternative solution, and obviously a direct competitor. So my definition is kind of multifaceted of a competitor. And so when they sign up, they're switching from something to you. And then when they leave you, they're switching away from you to something else. And so an understanding of that can be really critical. So since we're so obsessed about the document space at FYI, we decided we were going to do some research we haven't really seen done. And what research we haven't seen done is actually figuring out why people switch to a product or why people switch from a product to a new product. And we have no stake in this game. We just connect with all these apps, and we want to kind of educate the market about them because we're seeing like a kind of explosion of new apps when it comes to productivity and documents and things like that. So this is the methodology we use. Again, I'm pretty, I have radical candor, I'll say, just because of the talk from earlier. And so this is the only thing I really like about jobs to be done. The whole idea of, and that's a methodology and a framework that product people use, but the thing I really like about it is what they call the switch method, which is a way of asking questions to interviewees to understand the events that led up to people switching and the push and pull. So the push and pull is basically the push towards a new solution, the habit that prevents you from going to it, the pull towards the new solution, and the anxiety about going to it. And so there's this whole methodology there, and they call it the jobs to be done forces. Again, I love this part of the framework. All the other parts of jobs to be done, I've seen every company that tries to implement it shit the bed on it. And then they don't implement this stuff, and this stuff's really gold. So this is what it ends up looking like. Basically, when you ask the questions the way they suggest, and all this stuff's online, you can learn how to do it. The person who's doing it on my team right now is relatively junior at interviewing and things like that. He loves talking to people, though. He's done a lot of interviews for us, and I just threw him this stuff, helped him with his questions, and I'm sure he's off to the races. So as long as it's someone who can do the interviewing, you can learn this. You don't need expertise or anything like that. And what you get is you get this great timeline about why people abandoned or canceled or why people signed up for a product. And it's basically like, when was their first thought? They were passively looking at the time. Event 1 happened, actively looking. Event 2 happened. They made a decision, and then they chose to abandon. I don't see enough companies doing this, and it's ridiculously good. And it comes from like folks like Clay Christensen and a bunch of kind of pundits, I'll call them. And it's one of the best parts of this methodology. At one of my companies back in the day called Kissmetrics, we basically applied this method, and we learned that there was a first thought, which is like, is the analytics tool, we were in the analytics space, is the analytics tool I'm using doing what I need it to do? Then they're sort of passingly looking around like, what's up? Like, what's going on? Like, what are the other tools I could use? And then this is all basically most people using Google Analytics at this point. Then some event happens where they try to get at some data in the tool, and they are frustrated for some reason. Then they start actively looking and like looking at all these products, sometimes Googling a bunch of stuff online. And actually what they do at that time is they're actually kind of Googling around on how can I do this with Google Analytics? How can I figure out how to do this? And in a way, they're almost like actively looking for a solution. And then the event 2 happens, like they just figure out there's something they just can't do. And they keep trying. And that's when they start making the decision. So when we learned that, at Kissmetrics, we started writing a lot of content about sort of advanced Google Analytics things. Because we knew we could get people closer to the decision. But before they made the decision, if they found us when they started Googling around about how do I do X, Y, or Z with Google Analytics. And that was fantastic because there was a couple key differentiators we had that really we could insert in at that point. Not when they're a beginner with Google Analytics, but once they try to get advanced with Google Analytics. And without doing this interviewing, we wouldn't be sure that marketing strategy would work. And it also started dictating some of the things we did in the product. So this is kind of what I kind of described, which is you get priceless learnings when you actually do this type of surveying. It's not rocket science, and it's really helpful, and I'm really surprised that most folks don't do it. And I think more people should be doing it. And it's a form of competitive research in my mind. So here's a bonus. If you've done all that stuff, what we ended up doing is at FYI, we ended up building an MVP, so a minimum viable product. You could call it an experiment, whatever name you want to call it, depending on what you believe in. We ended up calling it and doing it. And so what that was is it kind of looked like this. We built it in 5 days. We connected to the different document apps that you use. And the ones that were quickest to connect to were the ones that we could just literally query their API in real time and get results back. And it was G Suite, Dropbox, Slack, Box, and OneDrive. And so we had only about 20 to 30 people use it in the beginning in 2 batches. And we just understood like why the folks that came before us failed. The reason is all the folks that came before us in this space built a search box. And they said, basically, the way people find documents is a search box. Okay, cool. So we were like, instead of wasting months or years building out all the tech and all this machine learning and all this crap to build a better search box, we wanted to learn, why did all the competitors, and even some that existed at this time, and even today, why are they not getting traction? Why did a lot of them get to the graveyard and have a tombstone, or get acqui-hired, or all the different things that happen in the space? Because we didn't want to be like that, obviously. And so another form of competitive research here is basically building something really fast and seeing how people use it. And what we learned is that people would maybe use a search box like this once a month. And we wanted to build a product people use every day. So I'm not going to blow it up and tell you what we do, but we have found a way to help you find your documents in 3 clicks or less. Yes, we have a search box, but it should be your last resort in our interface, just like going to any of these apps should be your last resort as well. You can, again, sign up for free, check it out. But this was basically this product was a culmination of a lot of research on the problem, the competitors, and then a ton of synthesizing and analysis and using our own intuition, our own kind of thinking about what the future should look like, and then kind of building it. So we use a lot of these data points in order to come up with what we have today. I don't know if there's time for Q&A, Matt, but here I am. And if you're interested in competitive research, feel free to email me. Happy to share a slide or talk more about it. It's something I'm pretty passionate about amongst many other things. Thanks.
Thank you, Hiten.
Yeah.